Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is kind of a cross webinar between two different virtual events. So we've got the Midwest Oracle User Group and the Chicago Oracle User Group Summer Conference and the Chicago Oracle User Group 20 in 2020 webinar series. So thank you again for joining us, however you got here today. We do have several more events in both of those sessions or those conferences. So I'll send links to everybody if you want to sign up for any other events coming up. Today's conference is sponsored by Viscosity North America, and you're joining us for the Oracle Apex New Features and Roadmap presentation by Joel Kallman. My name is Monica Lee, and I'm the Marketing Director at Viscosity North America. I'm also the conference chair for the Midwest Oracle User Group, so if you frequent that conference in Chicago annually, you might recognize me. At Viscosity, it's our mission to enable business transformation at a time when companies must change to survive. And while this is always an important theme in technology, is especially vital right now. We are a professional and managed services firm built on 3 pillars, and that includes data, applications, and infrastructure. And so as a full Oracle Stack consulting firm, we are most sought for our core expertise in RAC, Oracle Apex, performance tuning, high availability, and engineered systems. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Midwest Oracle User Group President, Rich Niemiec.
Thank you so much, Monica. First of all, I want to thank you for coordinating all of this. What a great job you did. I also want to thank Alfredo Abadi, who also helped us coordinate this week. Our speaker today is, to no one's surprise, is I call him the master of development, Joel Kallman. But before I get to him, I did want to say that tomorrow, the future is data-driven with Maria Colgan, and Nitin Vengulkar, Autonomous to Data Safe on Friday. And keep in mind that every Wednesday is going to be a COUG, and that's the 20 in 2020. So you got a couple more sessions this week, and then every Wednesday after that. I want to move it to Oracle Apex. Oracle Apex is on the Autonomous Database Cloud. The number, this is the most staggering statistic, the worldwide number of Apex developer has more than doubled in the past 12 months. So in the last year, you've doubled the number of developers, and the number of Apex apps has more than doubled over the past 12 months. This is an amazing product. Joel has always been a friend of the Midwest and Chicago Oracle user groups, and he's here to talk about with both Apex 19.2 and 20.1, some of those new features and the roadmap ahead. So Joel, thanks so much. Oracle Senior Director for Software Development on the product. Thank you so much for joining us again here at the Midwest Chicago Oracle User Group, and over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rich. And Monica, I assume you can see me as well. Is that right?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right, great. Thanks for having me. I promise this will hopefully be worth your while. As Rich said, my name's Joel Coleman. I'm the Senior Director of Software Development at Oracle for Apex. And Apex is something that my Senior Vice President, Michael Hitchell, and I started back in 1999. And we've been leading the development and product management of it since that time. I don't know if everybody is familiar with Apex or not. Maybe you're here because you're curious about it or heard about it. So for those who are super familiar with Apex, forgive me, I'm just going to have the briefest overall introduction of Apex, just in case somebody doesn't know what's going on with it. I encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A, and unless there's something burning, I'm probably going to save these until the end. If you were able to talk, I would just have you interrupt me because I prefer for this to be interactive, but here we are, right? Okay, great. Let's get going. So as Rich talked about, Apex is really taking off, and there's a growing market of application development tools on the planet. and Apex is far and away the industry's most used enterprise low-code platform, bar none, both on premises, and it's growing in cloud as well. There are more than 50,000 customers using Apex worldwide, and that number is growing. So here comes that super brief Apex overview. For somebody who doesn't know about it, it's a framework to help people build applications, and build applications that look great on a desktop device or look great on your smartphone or your tablet without requiring any specific domain knowledge of, you know, how do I get something to size appropriately on my smartphone versus my desktop. It's super easy for you, anyone really, to build applications to visualize and maintain data. So I have rows of data in a table and I want to build a form and a report, and you can do this in minutes. And the other hallmark of Apex is that if you know SQL, you can flourish with Apex. You don't necessarily need to be a JavaScript wizard or CSS wizard or HTML wizard to build full stack quality applications using really Apex and your Oracle database. You hear a lot about converged data and databases, and I think that Oracle is underselling the capabilities of Oracle database, because typically when developers think about a database, they think about, I'm going to put a row in, I'm going to get a row out, and I'm going to do everything outside the database. And I believe rather than just a data management platform, I believe the Oracle database is a phenomenal application development platform, especially for those applications which deal with all kinds of data. And unless you're writing like Zynga Poker, most business applications deal with data. And there is this rich application development functionality that is native to the database that really anybody could use via SQL. And what's great about Apex is its native language is SQL. So as a quick example, we had a webinar, one of these Apex office hours or Ask Tom office hours a month or two ago with the Oracle spatial product development team. And for those who don't know, spatial data is a specific data type that you can manage in the Oracle database. And for years, this has been a paid option to the database. So you had to, especially on premises, it was additional cost. And I think in the past year, Oracle changed the licensing of this such that both machine learning and spatial data are part of every Oracle database, no additional license, every edition, every database. And the spatial data team, they really were consulting. They were helping a customer who, very timely business problem here, wanted to implement a solution to assist with contact tracing of their citizens. And they had built functionality on top of Oracle Spatial to support this. And once this capability is accessible via SQL, it is trivial to put a beautiful Apex UI on top of this. And so if you're so interested, I encourage you to take a look at this webinar. I should also point out that these APIs to assist with contact tracing, the spatial data team added this to Oracle Spatial, and you can download a patch from my Oracle support today, patch spatial, and away you go. Apex is available everywhere. So wherever you have an Oracle database, you can run Apex on premises, in the cloud, other clouds, it doesn't matter. You can build locally, deploy to cloud, develop something on your little laptop running Oracle XE Express Edition, the free version, deploy it to a 28 node rack cluster, doesn't matter. Rather than just being something that runs exclusively on our cloud, you have complete flexibility wherever you choose to run your Apex applications, and wherever you have an Oracle database, you can do this. I should also state that although the customer base of Apex today remains largely on premises, there is a big shift to the Oracle Cloud and Autonomous Database. And I always like showing this picture I took of a partner in the UK, Explorer, and I loved their little tagline where they say, we develop cloud-ready applications, because the same applications that you are running on premises today and the same experience you have building applications on premises with Apex, it is virtually identical to the cloud, other than you get all the benefits of fully managed infrastructure, autonomous database, and more. Just to talk about Oracle briefly, is one of the biggest customers of Apex on the planet is Oracle Corporation. And there are literally thousands of Apex applications in use at Oracle, used by virtually every line of business. One of the hallmarks of a low-code platform is there's many benefits of it. So not only is it cheaper and faster to deliver applications, but you can also broaden the base of people who can contribute solutions to the enterprise. And we've seen this throughout Oracle. That is, there are citizen developers, there are power users in marketing or manufacturing and distribution or finance or HR who are building internal applications that they would probably otherwise solve with the wrong tool, right? Let's say they would create a spreadsheet and treat it as a multi-user database. We see this problem everywhere. So one of the most popular applications, even still today at Oracle, is this thing called ARIA People. It is effectively an employee directory. And what's great about this, though, is this remains one of the most popular applications in all of Oracle. There's over 1 million page views a day, from between 50 and 60,000 distinct users. And this is effectively pushing our SaaS software, right, the people who write HCM, to build a better directory, because effectively, if we're not using our own SaaS software, then something's wrong. So this has run for many, many years, and is still running, and will, at least for the next year or so. But I like that it's effectively pushing our SaaS solutions to do better. Oracle is in the process of opening up some of our offices globally, and I imagine many of you are in the same boat. That is, if it isn't obvious, I'm working from home in my bunker, in my basement. And at least in the US, Oracle is not opening offices, but globally they are in a few countries and will expand this. But what Oracle needed was a way to control the density of population in an office. And so if you want to go visit an office in Korea, which is, I think they have the offices open, they set a cap at 30% of capacity or 40% of capacity. And someone, even if they wanted to go into their own office, they needed to reserve that office. And effectively, in a matter of 6 weeks, we augmented this ARIA People and rolled this out company-wide for people to manage their space reservations throughout the company. Apex is also used by our Cloud at Customer operations. So you might have heard of this offering from Oracle called Cloud at Customer. So you can actually effectively run on your on-premises the same cloud solutions, the same services that we do in Oracle Cloud. And they have a lot of infrastructure to manage and data to manage, and they use Apex to solve this, oddly enough, on Autonomous Database. And another interesting example is our own payroll department, although this doesn't necessarily convey the problem being solved here, is people would have questions for payroll, and they would send an email, or they would send it to a mailing list. And it becomes really hard to manage and triage and assign. And they wrote a simple Apex application to manage these queries, if you will, for different payroll departments throughout the company. Also, I don't know who was in Chicago last time when I was there a year ago, but I did add a couple things here since we last met. I do have to say, I'm obviously there's great issues with this pandemic, and my heart bleeds for everyone who they've lost their job and lost their enterprise and lost their business. So this is going to sound so trivial when I say this, but I really enjoyed going to the Chicago Oracle User Group and the Midwest Oracle User Group meeting last year, because afterwards I was able to take a stroll south of Willis Tower, and there's a Portillo's there. So for the record, I did have a cheesy beef and a Chicago dog. So hopefully I can do this in person next year. Since we last met, this happened in November 2019, that Apex Oracle was named as a Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice Award. And this is, rather than Gartner's assessment, these are vetted customer reviews. And thanks to our many customers like you, we were one of 4 who received this distinction. There's also G2 Crowd. This isn't anything that we curate, but Apex was listed as one of the best low-code development platforms on G2 Crowd. And then just in I think a month or 2 ago, there's another analyst firm, Constellation. They have their short list of low-code platforms, and Apex made the list there as well. Like Rich talked about earlier, touching on this, the momentum with Apex, because we've been doing this right since 1999, the momentum has never been greater. As I was telling my wife the other day, it seemed like in the past we would go to analyst firms and beg for them to rate us, right? We would just beg to be on there, and even a mention, even if it was a bad mention, just to get a mention would be good. And now analyst firms are coming to Oracle saying, we're doing this survey, we're doing this analysis, and Apex is going to be part of that. So how things change over 20 years. Another thing I want to mention, and for those who are saying, hey, when the hell are we going to get to new features? Don't worry. But I just want to emphasize how Apex is increasing in visibility externally and internally. And I'll state this briefly. One of the in mid-March, when things started going south globally, Larry Ellison and our executive management approached my senior vice president, Michael Hitra, to help create a solution to gather data about the treatments for coronavirus. And the goal was not to implement a clinical trial system, but to effectively implement a data gathering system to help government officials in the US make informed decisions about treatment for coronavirus. And we started on the night, not even the evening, the night of the 18th. And the original commitment was that this was going to be available and ready for production in 3 days, so that's Saturday. And I even forget why we started on apex.oracle.com, but we gathered with our executive management and health science specialists in the company and started working on a data model until 2:30 in the morning, and then woke up the next day and began in earnest building an application on top of this. And the whole goal of the system was for doctors to add their patients who are receiving some type of treatment for coronavirus. Their patients would get an email, and then the patient would say, we kept it as simple as possible, how are you doing versus yesterday, better, worse, or same, and any new symptoms. And it would just gather that data, go into an Oracle database, and away it goes. So the first real prototype of these systems was done on the 22nd, which was effectively a mere 3 business days later. And I intentionally have this blacked out because I know this is being recorded, and I don't want to get in trouble with the company. But on this Sunday, we were presenting this to Larry Ellison, and just on the very first page, he gave an enormous amount of feedback about the colors and the position and the text and the size and all this feedback about labels. And he asked us if we got it. If we're ready to move on, if we have all this feedback and we're ready to move on. And like most people who are building applications, you collect feedback, you scurry away, you go build your app, and then you come back and you show it again. And Shakib Rahman, who's a UI designer and software development manager on the Apex team, suggested to Larry, why don't we do this live? And Larry said, sure, let's do this live. So he's blocked out here. I don't want to get in trouble, but we spent 2.5 hours on this Sunday collaborating with our end users, with Larry Ellison and these researchers and these doctors, building this application in real time. And these doctors praised Larry, said it was just an amazing system he had. And I think that's when the realization came to our executive management of what they have in Apex. So I said this was going to be short, but here I'm going long. This was rolled out on the 30th. Less than 2 weeks later, it was announced by the White House on April 3rd, and it's still live today. I put this out there on LinkedIn when the White House announced it. But what's so interesting is at the time this was announced, we were already well underway into our second application. And so this was the Therapeutic learning system, which I just talked about. It was a collection of about 200 pages over 7 applications. There's a built-in module for support. And what you're looking at here, this is what a doctor would see on their iPhone. On the tablet here, this is what a patient would see. And this whole system was rolled out on Oracle Cloud in 2 weeks. And I don't think any other team or technology could have done this ever. And I don't care what you're using. I think it would have been impossible. So there's a nice write-up from Tony Baer. I gave an interview to this guy about the Therapeutic learning system. Then, like I said, we're already well underway into our second system. So there's this diagnostic management system. This took about 2 months to develop. Then there's a patient management system. This is effectively surveilling a population and track their symptoms and health status as coronavirus comes across a geography. And then I would say in the past 3 weeks, there's the rollout of the Coronavirus Prevention Network vaccine trials. And if you go there today, this is just it's a survey this is through the NIH. They are collecting information from people who want to participate in vaccine trials coming up. And this is all in Apex and on Oracle Cloud today. Oh, and then the interesting thing about low code in Apex is that one of the most popular use cases of Apex is the development of opportunistic applications. That is, those applications for which there is a loose definition and an immediate need. And during COVID-19, these opportunities for applications and requirements are abound. They're everywhere. We dealt with a hospital who they were standing up hospital beds and tents, and they had no way to manage assignments of the beds themselves, right? And there's time and time again, there are applications for which there's an immediate need, and you don't have time to, break out your editor and start writing your line of code and hoping things come out. It's like you need an application in a day or two. And the community as a whole, the Apex community globally has delivered. And if you go to the community site, apex.world, there's a little tab there for COVID-19 apps, and this list keeps on growing. And you'll see globally a number of people who have contributed fast solutions to assist with this. Okay. Let's move on. So what I'm going to do is, because I debated today, should I just do all demo, or for people who are going to watch this later, might you want to have something written down? So I'm going to do a little bit of both. And I think I'm going to focus more a little bit on the 20.1 new features. I told Rich earlier I would do 19.2 and 20.1, but some of this will come out anyways. And I want to go into each one of these, and I'll show some of these features as we go. Okay. So one of the most sought after features, even though it isn't the greatest impact, one of the most sought after features were SEO, search engine optimized friendly URLs. Because anybody who's ever used any Apex application before, they look at just all this garbage. And not only is this not web crawler friendly, it's not web crawler friendly, but people think it looks odd, it looks like a bunch of gobbledygook, and can't we have something that effectively mirrors our application a bit more? And what we have in Apex 20.1, it's the first phase of this solution. It's not quite complete yet, but what we see is that you can have an alias for an application, and you can have an alias for pages, and the path to your application now becomes much more streamlined. When I talk about this being the first phase of a two-phase solution, you'll see the rest of this information here to the right still needs to be, I would say, more normalized to a REST standard and not perhaps these attribute value pairs that we commonly see. But it's important to note that new applications will use these friendly URLs, but existing applications, even if you change the application to use the friendly URLs, the old URLs, if they have bookmarks to them, will work just fine, okay? And this is enabled and disabled as an application attribute. So there's a property. If you go edit your application definition, you can toggle friendly URLs, yes or no. And like I said, for new applications in 20.1, this will be turned on by default. And then this will use your application alias and page aliases, okay? What you'll also see in Apex 20.1 is a Redwood theme. And hopefully some of you are familiar or have heard of Redwood before, but it is the really the total application experience and user interface that is permeating all software from Oracle, and especially our SaaS applications. You'll see, and I'll show this right now. Let me halt. I think I want to do this, and hope you can still see my screen. If I come to...
We do see that.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. So I'm running Apex on my free autonomous database. And so even from the standpoint of if I, let me sign out here, right? And I can switch to the login, right? So this is a radical departure for Apex, but yet, oh, it's I hope I got the right password. Okay, good. So we've Redwoodized the UI of Apex itself. Also, I should point out that there is there's a dark mode for Apex. So if I switch this to dark mode, you'll see that like the Mac has a dark mode, and you're able to switch between light and dark, or have it be completely automatic as well. Okay. So the one might ask, that's great that you do this for the builder, Joel, but how about the applications we build, right? If I want to create something that looks like Oracle SaaS, can I do that today? And in Apex 20.1, the answer is no, but that's coming, okay? Another, I would say, quite innovative feature, at least to add to an application development environment, is something called mega menus. And in any Apex application, especially the more recent ones, you've probably seen the navigation menu. Let me pick an application and run it here. So here's an app that I created before, and log in here. Okay, and there's a navigation menu that's associated with your application. This is collapsible. You could have the navigation menu on the left-hand side. You can have it effectively be tabs across the top. And this sometimes gets a bit limiting because especially if you have nested information here, if you have a really large application. And so just to explain the concept of a mega menu, if I go to apex.oracle.com, or you'll find this is even on oracle.com itself. If I click this little hamburger menu, up pops the navigation for my entire application, or in this case here of apex.oracle.com. Okay, so I have a sample application here. If I go to the mega menu examples, here we go. And this just gives an idea of the variability of what you can achieve with mega menus. So rather than have the navigation menu consume all this real estate on the left-hand side, you can pop up a menu and you can control, is this done in 2 columns? Is this done in 5 columns? You can have hierarchical information. You can display with icons here. Notice that you can have groups. So this obviously becomes very obvious where I've effectively organized my information. And you can even drill down, if I go into template options here, yeah, you'll notice that you can even have a different menu. This has always been available, but you can have a different menu per page or override it on a page level if you wish. So notice that this is dramatically different than my application level menu that I had, okay? And I should also point out that this is completely mobile friendly. So again, if you go to apex.oracle.com, where you do this in your own Apex application, you get this functionality out of the box, no code. Okay. Very often people wish to build a pipeline and be able to make changes to environments all from within the cockpit of Apex itself. Because today there are facilities for you to build an application and then export this application and perhaps export the object definitions, the underlying database object definitions, and package this up and either upload it to another system or put it in Git or Subversion and then push it in your pipeline, and somehow it's going to automatically make it to another environment. And what we're seeing is, especially in a lot of these low-code platforms, developers want to be able to develop their application and seamlessly deploy the artifacts of their application, whether it be an install or an upgrade, to another environment. And there's a new facility now in Apex that lets you deploy an application all from within the UI itself. And this effectively makes use of functionality native to ORDS or Oracle REST Data Services. It's effectively a companion product with Apex. And what this does is ORDS can provide REST interfaces to another database or another database service. And so assuming that you have that completely configured, using a single click, and we're able to then, you're able to define what this remote environment is. You would have to provide credentials to access this REST service, which we store and encrypt locally. And now via just one click of a mouse, you can take your application, build your application, package up the objects, the supporting objects, and deploy it and have it installed on another environment, whether this be a stage environment or QA environment or production. You can have numerous environments, and you never have to leave the cockpit of Apex to manage this deployment. Okay. Another area that we've tried to improve is, and again, this is a multi-step solution. One of the biggest complaints about Apex has been the ability to integrate into a software delivery pipeline or a continuous integration delivery system, and being able to discreetly manage the artifacts of an application. And so one of the things that we've done in Apex 20.1 is the ability to export an application definition as a zip file. And what's great about this is that the enclosed zip file, if you will, it contains an entire hierarchy of your application definition, and you can manage each component discreetly. So for people who are longtime Apex users, if you have, I don't know, a 30-page application, and you make a change to a list of values and you want to promote that out to production, there are ways to do this today in Apex, right, to get just that discrete element. But very often what people do is they export the entire application definition, push it out there, and away they go. And they have this big monolith of changes that might not be ready for production or are not discreetly managed in version control. And what we can do in Apex now is, and I'll demonstrate this here, is export an application as a zip file. So what I'm going to do is export import. I'm going to export, so here's the remote deployment. I'm going to export my application definition, and now I can say export as zip. So if I just export right now as it is, I'm going to get through the traditional single file that has everything in it. But what I'm also going to do now is I'm going to export as a zip file. Okay, there it goes. And if I go to my terminal, I'll show this here. Okay, so 106 zip to here, unzip F107. Okay, so it's difficult to look at it here from my terminal, but if I look at this from my Finder on the Mac, you can see there's an install script which will install all the discrete components. I now have everything that is application level. So here's all my shared components in the respective directory. Here are all my pages. And so now what I can do is I can export as a zip file. I can check this into Git or check this into Subversion, for example, and then someone can make changes to an application. Maybe you have even multiple developers, and you can export as a zip again, overlay this, commit to version control, and it's only going to version those components which have changed rather than the one big monolith. Okay. This isn't quite version control. We're still on a march to be able to do this and to be able to develop discrete patches easily from the UI, but we're making incremental progress to get there. Again, not quite version control, but a developer-friendly feature is something called automatic backups. And what we will do in Apex is back up your application definition directly in the Apex UI itself. And by default, we will save 25 versions or backups of an application, and you can restore at any point in time. This, an application, if changed, will be backed up on a daily basis, but you can also do these on demand. And I'll even give a quick demo of this too. So I'll go back into the app builder, and I'm going to go into manage backups, and I can see that here's a backup for mega menu examples. If I go to my specific application, okay, so I go into tasks, and then I want to say back this up, create backup of this application, test for COUG, right? And so I can do this on demand, and I can provide labels for these. We will keep at most 25, and you can also lock a specific backup such that it won't be purged, right, in our list of 25. So again, not intended to be confused with version control, but we do this directly in the UI and the system of Apex, and you can easily revert or restore to a different application ID and application backup. Okay. I better pick it up here. There is built-in PDF printing for interactive grids in Apex 20.1. Apex used to have some basic rudimentary PDF printing that was provided by Oracle REST data services. It effectively included the Apache FOP libraries, and we had integrated Apex with that to do PDF printing. And that functionality had to be removed from ORDs. So today, out of the box, if you have Apex and ORDs, there's not even this most basic PDF printing until Apex 20.1. And this is, again, one of these features that we are progressing. So today, and I'll show this here, there's basic PDF printing in interactive grids. And then in the forthcoming release of Apex 20.2, we've extended this to the other components, interactive reports, classic reports, and the like. So if I have a little application here with tasks, and I have an interactive grid, this will respect filtering. It will respect even highlights, for example. So if I come along and I say, in this interactive grid, I want to implement a highlight rule, and I'll do my favorite big budget. And I'm going to say my background color is yellow, foreground color is red, and I'm going to do this when budget greater than or equals to 600. Save. Okay. And now requiring no other functionality is I can download this to PDF and it will respect this. Yep. Hopefully it's coming. There we go. Yeah. And so there are some basic controls. So you can control the heading, you can control the layout. And so we're not trying to compete with Apex Office Print or a full-blown reporting infrastructure, but we want to be able to provide some native functionality out of the box. And like I said, today in Apex 20.1, this is interactive grid only, and we are extending this to other components in Apex 20.2. Okay. So there's a number of interactive grid enhancements, probably one of the most notable. And again, if you're new to Apex, this might be a bit much for you. It's going to be too new, but there's another component in Apex called interactive reports, and we provided both programmatic and declarative ways for someone to filter a report, an interactive report. So in this example here, let's say I'm showing a bar chart and somebody's selecting a piece of that bar. We want to then take them to a report and filter on that little piece that they selected. And this has been there for many years in interactive reports. To be able to filter an interactive report both in a URL, so you can construct a link and say, okay, I want to show this page and I want to filter on this. And effectively, we've now expanded this to interactive grids. So there's a new PL SQL package called Apex IG for someone to programmatically add a filter to an interactive grid at runtime and clear it. And then we also support the linkage as we show here, right? So for someone to easily create a UI, show an interactive grid and filter by whatever, department, city, zip, doesn't matter, okay? A very minor feature, but one which has annoyed our customers for years, and we're addressing this. If you've ever been running, effectively you've seen this on the internet, but also an Apex application. Let's say you've left your Apex application open all day and you're entering a form and you hit apply changes and you get some message that says your session's timed out, log in again. And of course, you've lost everything that you had entered. And so one thing that we've introduced in Apex 20.2 are session timeout alerts. So you can control if a user is displayed effectively a little notification saying, hey, your session is going to expire here at this time. Do you want to continue on? And then when the session expires, they'll also be given another alert rather than catching them off guard. Minor feature, but this is a much better user experience for your end users. There's been a number of enhancements to faceted search there's a couple things I'll highlight here. There are now conditional facets, which for those who don't know, and I'll show this right here, a faceted search is, we are trying to bring the ease of use of common websites to business data. And so everybody knows how to use this type of filtering of data, right? So I'm going to click on a little facet over here, and I'm going to drill down to this person here. And so I'm able to very quickly see the results in real time. So a few things here. Notice that I can now dismiss every one of these facets here. I could clear all if I wish. But there are also now conditional facets. So for example, if I said, don't show cost unless they've selected budget, I can just do this declaratively. Another example, and I can't really show it here because I don't have the update for this or the data for this, but in prior to Apex 20.1, we would show the total row count as the actual number itself. So if this was, let's say migrate from SQL Server had 5 million rows, we're going to see 5,000, whatever, 0, 1, 2, 3. And it makes the display very wide and difficult to read, and it looks very cluttered. But now what we have, if I show this here, we also have a compact count display. And so you can set the threshold. So you can say above this amount, above this number, use a compact count display. And so we'll show M and K and the like, and effectively abbreviated numbers, which is much easier for someone to consume. For those who are interested in SODA, I don't know if people even know what that is. That is the Simple Oracle Document Access. I think that's what it is, or maybe APIs. I should even Google that now. But this is a NoSQL API-like interface for you to manage and store and manipulate JSON documents natively in an Oracle database. And these are called collections, and we actually have built-in support in Apex in the SQL workshop for creating and managing SODA collections. And so I'll even give a quick demo of this if I can. So I'm going to go into the application builder, and I'm going to go into object browser, and I can see I have that tasks table here. And if I go down to SODA collections, I see nothing, but I can go ahead and create a new SODA collection. And I'm going to do this based upon an existing JSON file. Here it is. This is a JSON file of Airbnb data. And I'll call this Airbnb. And do you want Apex to create a relational view against this JSON data itself? I'm just going to leave that as yes. And I'm going to say load data. So this is a fairly compact document, and I'm going to see how fast I can load this here. So 7,800 rows or documents, if you will. I could go ahead and create an application now on this view, but let's just actually look at the collection itself. So there's a few things that we get for free. So I can browse the data in this collection. This is a JSON document. We also can return a guide, effectively a description of the data itself. And notice that underneath the hood, we also created a database view. And this is just a normal database view that I could now access via anything that can access a database view. So let me look at here's the code associated in the definition of the view. Okay. Not so easy, but again, we're abstracting this complexity, right? This is referencing each of the elements of the underlying JSON document itself. And if I look at the actual data, it's just rows. So we've abstracted all this complexity out. So someone could build an application on JSON documents and also build what I would classify as relational applications on top of that data. Okay? I know I'm going fast here, but that's by design. Okay? So let's look at a few features that are specific to Apex on Autonomous Database. Maybe I could even show a couple of these here. So I blogged about this earlier before Apex 20.1 came out on Autonomous Database. And customers wanted the ability to control when an Apex upgrade was applied to their Autonomous Database service. Because the way that patching is done, as you can imagine, there's a large global fleet of services. And, you know, let's say I say, well, I'm going to, ops at Oracle, they're going to apply the patches at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Is that 8 a.m. on a Saturday Chicago time? Is it Cairo time? Who knows, right? So you really don't control when patches will be applied to your service. And in the case of Apex, very often customers would want to be able to test their Apex applications on the new version before upgrading their production service. So what we've provided, and this is controlled via the instance settings on your Apex on Autonomous Service, is you can choose to defer the upgrade of Apex for your instance. So when the patches are rolled out across all the regions on Autonomous Database, it's going to come to yours and it's basically going to halt. It's not going to apply them right away. You're going to get notified that there are pending updates, but they will not be applied right away. And what this gives you the ability to do is, if you wish, clone your service, let the upgrade proceed, test your applications there, and then when you're ready, you can come back and say, click upgrade now, and you could upgrade your Apex instance at a time of your choosing, at 8 a.m. on a Saturday Chicago time. You're in complete control of this. And so we will defer these upgrades for up to 45 days, and then after 45 days, the whole fleet's going to be upgraded. Okay? But this has been a big one, especially for people who want to build and deploy production Apex applications. Hopefully I can give a quick demo here. We've added to SQL Workshop the ability to load data from object storage on the cloud. And so rather than you take a big file and upload it into Apex and then do data loading that way, a file can exist on Object Store, and you can then reference this directly from the UI in Apex. And let's see how quick I am at demoing this. And if I go to cloud.oracle.com, forgive me because I'm not logged in here. And I'm going to log into my account. And this is, like I said, this is always free for those. I get both 2 free autonomous databases, and I also get free object storage. Gmail.com. Okay, and let's do this. So I just want to prove that I actually have the object storage out here. Okay, so here I am on cloud, and if I come to object storage, and I have a bucket out here called file share, and in this file share bucket, I have a couple files, right? An Excel spreadsheet and a file of Parquet format. And with this functionality, not only can you import CSV, XML, JSON, but we also support the ability to import files of Avro and Parquet format, which, to state it succinctly, are big data file formats. And what I can do is back on my cloud service now, I'm going to go into SQL Workshop. I'm going to go into Utilities, and I'm going to go into Data Workshop. And now I can load data like I normally would via upload, but I can load from cloud and load from a cloud object store. Fortunately, I've already done the integration with OCI here. So I'm just gonna, this is browsing that object storage bucket. I'm gonna choose this Parquet format. And I'm gonna say, it actually creates an external table to this. And now I'm going to say load data to local table. So I'm just going to call this sales. Okay. And let's go. And let's see how fast we can do this. Although this might consume all my time here. So see, otherwise this would be a lot of information for me to upload, and then we'd have to parse it, and it's done natively from object storage. The other thing, which I'll mention on my slide, is not only can we do data loading into autonomous database, this could be autonomous transaction processing or autonomous data warehouse. Not only, there we are, 916,000 rows, not bad. Not only can we do this data loading from Oracle Object Storage, but we can also do it from Amazon S3. So the file could be out there on the object storage on Amazon, and we can also load, okay? I'm quickly running out of time. One last new feature in Apex on Autonomous is the ability for you, the developer, to specify your service level at which a query in Apex will run. So there's been a number of customers who they've built Apex applications on their autonomous data warehouse, and they had, I don't know, 25 CPUs at their disposal, but then when they ran their Apex application, let's say their report or their chart, they deemed it slow. And that's because Apex would connect as this lowest service level. It would be 1 CPU. So even though the customer paid for it up to 24 CPUs, they would only use 1. And now in Apex, you can specify an optimizer hint in Apex. It's not a SQL query hint. It's this optimizer hint, which is an attribute in Apex, which will control the service level at which that query will run. So if you have a dashboard or a chart or a very complex data warehouse query, you, the developer, can control whether this continues to run at the low level or at the high level with all the available CPU and IO. Okay. And Monica, if I could just, I realize I'm running late here, but I'm going to get. I just want to cover briefly.
That's fine. That's
Am
fine.
I okay?
No problem. No problem.
Okay, great. Just the roadmap of what's coming with Apex in the future. As part of all of this great press that Apex has had and success Apex has had at Oracle as part of all of the development of these pandemic systems, we were able to petition and get approval for a new Oracle Apex service. And it's our hope that this is going to be out later this calendar year. It is going to be built exactly on the same autonomous database infrastructure. It will be browser-based only, so you won't be able to connect via SQLnet, via SQL Developer or Tableau or whatever. You'll have a browser-based only interface. It will include SQL Developer Web, but it will be at a far lower price point than autonomous database today. And there's going to be some caps on it as well. I think in terms of storage, either maybe it's 1 CPU and 128 gigabytes of storage, but it's going to be, which for most people who've used Apex applications, you're going to know you can do a lot with this. And like I said, it's my hope that this is going to be out later this calendar year. And it would support seamless upgrade to the full autonomous. Let's say you know, your new Apex service, you find that you want to support 1 million users instead of 10,000, you're not blocked. You can upgrade seamlessly there. Another big feature coming for, I would say, the Oracle community as a whole, not just Apex, is in Database 21, there will be something called the multilingual engine. And this is from the Oracle Labs team, who they've built Graal VM, if you've ever heard of this before. But effectively, this is going to provide server-side JavaScript capabilities natively in the database. So instead of just being limited to PL SQL for procedural logic, this will also add the support for JavaScript as procedural logic in the database. And we on the Apex team, we want to support this, and we will support this out of the box the day that database 21 is available. So we're adding today in Apex 20.2 the support for someone, instead of writing some conditional branch or some process in PL SQL, that you'll also be able to do this in JavaScript. And other languages are planned for the future, but the first language is going to be JavaScript. I also talked about how we're going to have extended support for both PDF and native Excel generation to the other components beyond just interactive grid. And then one thing that my Senior Vice President, Michael Hitra, is very keen on is something called automations. And this isn't necessarily quite, I wouldn't go so far as to call it declarative workflow, but we are adding the infrastructure to be able to add some asynchronous level of actions and processing and notification natively to your application, to provide a declarative UI on top of this, and in some cases a procedural logic. But very often people want to take some action or do some notification, or based upon the presence of some data, then take another action or call a PL SQL procedure. And it is in this framework which we are supporting automations. Big pie in the sky. Through the help of the ORDS team, we also want to support MySQL natively as a data source. So Apex will always require a database, an Oracle database, to run, but rather than just access a remote data source, MySQL via REST, we want to be able to have this operate natively in the Apex environment. So I'm in Apex. Here's my data source out there, which is MySQL, and I'll be able to build and deploy applications against that data source. Okay, just all through the site, right? All of the plumbing would be managed by ORDS. The management of the different SQL dialect would be managed through ORDS, and then you would be able to get the same Apex UI from this. I encourage you to keep in mind this link I have there at the bottom, apex.oracle.com/SOD, for statement of direction, and this is what we attempt to keep up to date for our ever-emerging capabilities in Apex. So I'm going to summarize. You've probably seen this before, but for those who are new to Apex, this is, I believe, one of the most effective and efficient environments for customers to build applications against data in their Oracle database. I didn't necessarily talk about this today, but it is very easy to build declaratively, without code, applications that go against not only your local database objects, but also arbitrary REST endpoints. And I think that's it. I might, if you have any questions about Apex, I encourage you to go to apex.oracle.com, and I might stop, Monica, and maybe review some questions if there are any.
You've got a few questions if you want to take a look.
Let's see. No sound yet. Okay, good. Hi, Tony Miller from Los Alamos, New Mexico. What are the Salvador Hernandez says, what are the main differences between Apex and Visual Builder? That's kind of a loaded question. Apex is native to the Oracle database. It runs on both the Oracle Cloud and on-premises. And Visual Builder, as they describe, their first primary target are SaaS extensions, and Visual Builder is very much friendly to JavaScript developers. Hopefully that's okay. Phyllis Butler says, is there a place to create SQL functions and procedures within Apex like one can with JavaScript functions? In order to make modifications to packages requires many levels of approval. Phyllis, I'm at joel.coleman@oracle.com. I'm not sure I understand that question, but if you send me an email, I will. I'll answer you. Okay. Sorry that I don't quite get that. What about further? Tony Miller asked, what about further integration with Apex Office Print? Great question, Tony. There is some slight native integration from an instance level configuration, so that you can use. For those who don't know, Apex Office Print is a third-party printing product and service If you go to apexofficeprint.com, it's there. It's quite popular. We license it internally at Oracle for one of our internal instances of Apex. And to answer your question, Tony, other than the most basic integration at the instance level, there isn't, at least today, not any deeper integration, so that you get the functionality out of the box at an interactive report or interactive grid. So right now, the instance level configuration is going to be at even for Apex 20.2. And I think that's it. Thanks everyone for attending and staying late. And for those who are in Chicagoland, I hope that this time next year I get to see everyone in person. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel, and we absolutely want to see you next year. Thanks, Monica. That was great.
All right, thanks everyone. I wish you a good day.
Take care, everyone. And if you haven't noticed, I put a few links for you in the chat window. So please visit the COUG and COUG pages so you can register for any upcoming sessions. Thank you so much again, Joel. Thank you, Rich. Take care.